father. Could the fact that he was spreading the same kind of fake news and sort of crazy conspiracy theories that were coming out of Russian sort of fake news labs, could that be an indication of what? Well, what would that be an indication of, Naveed Jamali, in your view?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think just to add one piece of context, I believe the elder Flynn was pushing very strongly for the younger Flynn to get a security clearance, which is really, I mean, before Jared Kushner, unheard of. So you're right, though. There's a question here, especially in light of the Facebook and the fact that there were these really right-wing, and that's being generous, ads purchased on Facebook. Is there a connection here? And, you know, while this may not be criminal per se, I think it goes to Malcolm's point, which is, what is the connection here with Russia in terms of being able to manipulate, in terms of the intelligence operation? Were these people directed assets? Were they in communication? Look, at this point, Joy, I wouldn't be surprised to find out that Tiffany is out of Trump's will and Vlad is in. I mean, it's so crazy, the nexus of Russian connection. Whether it's criminal or not, there is, as Malcolm said, a counterintelligence component of this, and that is an important part to remember.
Now, you know Tiffany was never in that well. Y'all stop being before Tiffany. Hunter, really quickly before you go, who is the White House the most concerned about in all of this web of characters?